Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of 3. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing up baby is about to get a little easier. Hello, everybody. Ashley Cooley here, owner of Birth Baby Sleep, host of the Bringing Up Baby podcast, and Happy New Year. Glad to be back, excited to be back, and always excited to bring you more episodes and great content. And today's episode, I would like to introduce you to a new friend of mine named Danielle Abbott, and she is a financial coach. And man, I love getting to talk about stuff like this. I love getting to talk about stuff that I know is on people's minds, but this is one of those things that we don't just bring up in casual conversation very much, if at all. And for me, in my previous life, I actually used to teach a financial literacy class, and I loved it. I love getting to help people kind of navigate their money and budgets a little bit, but I am nowhere near Danielle's range when it comes to this stuff, so that's why she's here. We are talking about babies and budgeting and saving for things and all that comes with it. So without further ado, here's Danielle and here's our conversation. Hello, Danielle. So nice to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so pumped for our conversation. I love having a good money conversation, and I know that's what we're going to be talking about today. But can you first share with us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Well, since this is a baby podcast, I'll share that I am a mom of 3, and I have a brand new little 4-month-old that we just started working on sleep last night. So that's going well so far. Yeah. So in your world. Yes. So I've got 3 kids and I'm a financial coach. And so oftentimes people don't really know what that is. You know, people might think financial advisor. And the difference I can really quickly wrap up with: a financial advisor, you're going to go to them when you're thinking like retirement, investments. And a financial coach is going to be doing the day-to-day money decisions, which is really oftentimes what we need before we can even get to that point of thinking, what am I doing on the big scale with my money? So I help people one-on-one with financial coaching. And I can tell you how, sort of my origin story of how I became a financial coach.
Please, yes.
Sure. So I come to this place from a place of sort of financial disaster, as I would say myself. And it really started on my first maternity leave. So I have a 10-year-old, and 10 years ago, or a little bit more, I was on my mat leave, and we had what I felt was this stagnant debt that was sort of there, and we couldn't really make any progress toward paying it down. And it was frustrating. And I could see that when I was on my mat leave, when we had to start paying for childcare for the first time and I went back to work, no longer were we going to be able to pay our bills. And that was a really scary moment for us. So we thought about, okay, what are we going to do here? We need more income. So we moved across the country with an 11-month-old away from everything. Luckily, we had my brother's family there to sort of help us land. And we were successful. We made more money. We had jobs. We made more money. But it was such a lesson to us that more money often does not fix money problems. And I see that time and time again with clients. So we were making more money, but the debt did not move. And because we didn't change the way we were managing the money, it just sort of slipped out of our hands. You know, I had a client recently say, it was like, poof, the money just sort of disintegrates, disappears. And so we sort of lived that life for a bit, the stagnant debt, and we were sort of just living life. And my next things seem to happen for me in maternity leaves. I don't know why. The next maternity leave came around.
I have so many maternity leave stories as well, but yes, continue.
Yeah, they're my little points in life to point to. So at that point, we were in another period of reduced income. I was just done with the stagnant debt, and I just wanted to get a handle on it. And I'll say as well, I was working as a director of finance. So part of my shame and embarrassment that was wrapped up with our financial situation was because, you know, I'm supposed to be able to handle this. You know, I do great in my job day to day, but my personal finances feel like a disaster. And so I didn't want to go talk to anyone. It seemed way too
Mm,
embarrassing.
yeah.
So, here I was on maternity leave again, done with it. And I just dove right into personal finance, ready to figure it out. And that's how I discovered financial coaching. And I used strategies. I found strategies and mindset shifts that I could use, and it worked for me. I put these things into play and we paid down our debt that had been with us for so long very quickly in that time. And so I realized then that that was my passion. I wanted to sort of spread the word to others, like, you can do it differently. It doesn't have to be awful. And I just wanted to be that casually dressed, easygoing, non-judgmental person who's been there to help people when they're struggling with their money.
I love that because money is such a, well, it's not a conversation. It is one of those things that we don't talk a lot about to a lot of people, our family, our friends. Like sometimes it's our partner that's not even on the up and up of what's going on with our own money.
Yes.
So having these conversations, and that's why I love having them on the podcast, is that maybe it'll get some wheels turning. Maybe it'll spur some conversations coming out of this. Because I've personally lived through it. I mean, I still do. I too have 3 kids,
Yeah.
and they don't get any cheaper as they get older. Let me tell you. So I really found it interesting going on maternity leaves as well. And thinking back now with 3 kids, I can look back at being on maternity leave with one kid and thinking like, oh my God, we were rich. We were
Totally.
comparable to like how are we. I wouldn't have never thought that we could manage money like we do with 3 kids, but that seems so far-fetched when we had none or just one.
Yes.
So what a difference, just all of that. I'm going in all kinds of places. I have so many questions, Danielle. um this is such it's going to be such valuable information for people. So it sounds like you've learned some strategies, some really cool methods of how to break this down day to day for person to person. What if we could bring it to, let's talk about these different stages that we go through with parenting and with growing families, and where money fits into it. The first one I think about, and this wouldn't be for everybody, but there's quite a number of families out there that need to plan financially to even have a baby, for fertility, for treatments. We know that those can be, or some of us may not know, but it can be quite costly
Yeah.
just to even try to get pregnant. So, could we start right there? And what are some tips that you can share to families in these situations around the planning of trying to save up for something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in this situation that we've got a few tools to pull from. So we can be saving towards fertility treatments, but we also know that often time is of the essence for these families. And so it can be really hard to put it off until the bucket of money is fully in place to move forward with that process. And I talk about the debt, shame, and embarrassment I had. And that's not just me. We have financial gurus out there that put a lot of shame on having debt and sort of say, whatever you have to do, live on beans and rice if you have to get out of debt and only use cash. And that puts so much on people that doesn't have to be there. It's simply a tool, and we don't have to make it a moral issue having debt. And so there's a way that you can go about it. So I'll talk about how we can go about saving up, but just on the debt piece. I think for families, if they can put together a plan of, okay, here's the amount that we're going to be able to save toward that period of time, and here's what we might lean on some credit for, and be really intentional about how they're going to use that credit. Because no, there is risk there. We don't want to, spike that credit up so much that it's really hard to pay it off after the fact. But if we can make a plan, put it in place, and see, okay, we can afford over time to pay this amount down over this period of time. So just being really intentional about the amount and the timeline that's involved. With personal finance, the timeline is a really important piece. So when we talk about the saving piece, let me talk really broadly about how I help people manage their money generally. And that will sort of speak to how we can save for this and other goals that people have.
Yes, because we're talking about fertility treatments, but like you could be saving for, I mean, whatever it is, it's about
Exactly.
saving for something that's kind of a big ticket item related to our babies. But yeah, go
Exactly.
ahead.
So
This is
what
great.
I see is a big issue with money is that we don't see it clearly. We've got all these ins and outs going on all month long. We're tapping cards. And when we think about money, it's sort of just this mishmash of ins and outs. And so what we want to do is get really organized and split our expenses into three categories. So we have our day-to-day spending. That's things like groceries, gas, eating out, coffees, and snacks on the run. And we want to categorize all those things together. We want to open up a separate bank account, a checking account, and be that account is the one that we're going to attach to our debit card. And we're going to use that for all the tappity tap taps that we're doing throughout the month. And in doing this, we create a fixed expense out of an expense that's up and down and all over the place. This is the area where people find it really hard to get control. It's really when people say, oh, I need to get on a budget, people are thinking, I need to cut out the daily coffee. It's not really about cutting out the daily coffee. It's just fitting it into the budget and knowing where those boundaries are. My favorite part about this category and how I treat it is I've tried lots of different ways of budgeting. I've tried apps where you budget down to the penny of how much am I eating out, how much am I getting in groceries. And again, that can cause a lot of emotion. If we're trying not to eat out as much and we've gone over in that account, it causes all this emotional drama that doesn't need to be there. So let's just set an amount. It takes a little bit of wiggling around to see what makes sense for your family, but figure out what is the total amount for all of those items, groceries, gas, eating out. Set that amount, transfer that amount into the spending account every payday. And then you know what you have from this pay to the next payday. That really helps control the spending. And so if I am getting my next sort of deposit of money into my spending account in 3 days, it helps me make decisions. If friends are going out for drinks, but we still have some groceries to get and the gas tank is low, it helps you make those decisions. Whereas before that, you might just, do all the things and figure it out later. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's our day-to-day spending. Our regular bills, we're going to leave those in the account where money comes into. So we get paid, our regular monthly bills are going to get paid out of that. This is another place where people have a lot of mental drama happening. What I see is people are keeping it in their minds. I have this, mortgage is due at this date. I got to make sure the money's in the account. And it's a lot of mental math. And we're thinking about money all the time throughout the month. So we want to move it toward thinking about money on your paydays, and that's it. So you let money come into the account, and only your monthly bills are going to come out of that. And so you can map that out and make sure the flow of income and the flow of expenses, if you make a list of all those monthly bills, put them in due date order with their amounts in one place, so you don't have to go scrounging to find them. You don't have to wait till the email comes and says the water bill's due. Just have them set in one place. So there's your regular monthly bills. So that's our two categories. We did day-to-day spending, we did monthly bills. Now we're going to talk about savings buckets. And this is where I'm headed with the fertility treatment saving discussion. So we want to think about what are all the non-monthly types of expenses that we have in our lives. And so they can be things like, the Costco membership comes out once every year. So that's
tire
one
changes,
thing.
Just because that's what we're doing right now. And that always gets me every year. Oh, right. We got to do that. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So we want to think of everything that might have hit us, go month by month. What sort of, we call them whammies. What things are going to hit us? It would be a whammy in that month that's out of the norm and that we're sort of not prepared for. We make a list of all those. We make a list of the amount that those are going to cost us and divide it by 12. Okay, so now every month, or you can split it by 2, make it every payday if it's twice a month, you're going to move that money over to a separate bank account made and nicknamed for that separate thing. So I would have a separate savings account for vehicle expenses. I would have a separate savings account for kids' activities. We know the cost of those can really add up. Mm-hmm. We're going to have separate savings accounts. created for all of these. And for a family that's working toward fertility treatment, or even within maybe they're doing it already, they're going to have a special savings account for fertility treatment. And every month they're going to put that set amount into that bucket. And so throughout the year, all of these buckets are being funded. And so there are the things that we often grab for the credit card for, or they have to land on a line of credit. Other things would be like gifts and travel and all of those types of things. So we set up those buckets and fill them up as we go. So those are the 3 categories of expenses. And we have to look at the whole picture over the whole year. What are all of these going to cost us, and separate it out to see, okay, now my monthly budget includes the cost of all the whammies coming at me through the year. And that's how you can see where does affordability lie.
Interesting. So does it matter your financial institution of like, can we all just open up as many of these savings or checkings accounts as we want to?
Pretty much. So far, every bank that I've worked with clients with has things that are sort of online accounts that are either free. I've actually only experienced free. Some might have like a low cost option. So you can open one up that's just online. So if you go onto your online banking, you can see them, you can nickname them, and those should be free. And it sounds wild to people often to, if I show them, at one point accounts. I had like 10 accounts. Often even just start with 3, start with 5 and nickname them for what they are, which is so powerful, because when I see an account that says travel and I can see that amount increasing each month, that's so helpful to me to know, like maybe things are stressful at home or work, but look at that travel account. We are going on a trip. We're going down south. And it sort of just keeps the motivation going. And, exactly the same goes for the fertility treatments. And if you're pairing that with maybe leaning on some credit, you can look at the full picture and say, what are we comfortable with? How much do we need to save to be comfortable with the mix that we're going to go forward with to afford that?
Yeah. I love that. I think what I love about it most is just how practical you are. I always like to take a practical standpoint on things, because you must remember. Do you remember the show Till Debt Do Us Part with Gail Voss?
Yes.
Do
with
we?
The jars.
Oh my God. Yes, and her jars of cash. I was obsessed. I was obsessed with that show and her. I loved it. But I love how that's just not practically how we live now, especially post-COVID. There's not a whole lot of cash necessarily that we are doing more of the tap. So having an actual account that allows for that, because that your bills and everything else is being taken care of. That's so practical. That plus you're also not saying, we have to save up all our money before we can do something. You can't go into debt because of that. Like, again, you could be waiting. We only have so many years that we can even try to have a baby with medical help. So we don't have all the time in the world. So, okay, we can use credit. It's not always a bad thing. We just want to use it wisely and with intention.
Exactly. And what I call that, and others call it, is value-based budgeting. So you want to look at, what do I value? And you'll be surprised sometimes. Clients are often surprised when they look at their full list of things that they're spending money on. When you take your goal, your primary goal, and so for a family, primary goal right now might be fertility treatments. You measure that against all the other things you're spending on. All of a sudden, things become really crystal clear. What you thought was a must-have, all of a sudden is like, well, actually, if it means I'm going to be able to do this other thing I really want, then maybe for a period of time, I can pull back on this other thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really got to see the numbers. You got to be able to see where your money's going to really be able to do all this stuff. But those are some really helpful tips when it comes to the saving. If we can talk about, so again, we're mentioning fertility treatments as being one of those things. You could be saving up for your kids' activities. You could be saving up for whatever it is, or the trip. So we know that can be used for any which way. What about just the fact that not a lot of families get a top up when they are on maternity leave or when they're on parental leave? And even the top up is not necessarily going to be to 100% of what you were making. So, and for a lot of people, and I was included in this when I worked at a previous job and was going on maternity leave for a couple of my kids, it was just EI. that we're getting for
Yeah.
at least a year, sometimes 18 months now, which is great in
Yeah.
some respects, but also you're getting the same amount of money. So now we just got to spread it out a little bit thinner. So how can we plan for this time? Because I can remember thinking, it's just myself and my husband. I'm pregnant. We're planning to go on maternity leave. I'm going to be on EI making quite a bit less money. I think it was like 55% or something like that. But now
Yes.
I'm eventually going to have to feed this other mouth and clothe them and like do all the things. So
Yes.
I can remember it feeling so impossible. Where's the money going to come from? So can we talk about that for
Yeah.
a little bit? Planning ahead for just being on leave with your baby.
Absolutely. So if you are fortunate enough to be planning ahead for this and you have that time to put a bucket, we're going to create a savings bucket and we're going to plan toward it, then that is incredible. So if you're in that position, it can, exactly like you're saying, feel completely daunting because we sort of often our lifestyle sort of fills in what we're making. And so we can fill in those empty spots of our income. And when we reduce it, the income, we really can reduce the lifestyle if we need to. And so really, again, getting clear on what our money is doing and where it's going. So this is very similar to if someone's planning like an emergency fund. And so, okay, if one of us loses our job, what do we need? And a financial guru is going to tell you 3 to 6 months of your expenses should be in a bank account that you can pull from to give you that time to turn it around. And so that's really similar to a maternity leave when you're off for a period of time. And so the issue with that idea is that we're thinking that we live exactly the same when we're off as when we're not off. So we know there's different expenses that will come up because now, especially if it's the first child, there's a baby and there wasn't before. But we want to really let's not like slap a sticker of 3 to 6 months on it, and let's be really clear and detailed. So let's first look at the income side. So if it's like what you're saying, if your partner is making their regular income and maybe the one person is taking time off, what does that look like? Do you have the EI? Are you eligible for that? Some people might not be. Do you have the top up? Some people do, some people don't. It varies by the organization. And CCB. So for a new parent, you might not be fully aware, but CCB in Canada at least is something that you can look forward to. And there are calculators online to help you figure out what that might look like for your family planning ahead. So you have your income side that you're building, what's coming in monthly. And then we have the expenses. So to actually look through your expense side and see what would life look like. Okay, well, maybe previously you were going to the office, an office job, and you got lunches every day. Well, that's probably going to shift. Maybe you're traveling less, and so you can reduce your gas budget. Take a really clear look at what does my budget look like in this new life that we're going to be living for this 6, 12, 18-month period. So we have your income, we have the new expense, and we have the gap that we need to fill. So that's not the same as what is 3 to 6 months expenses. That's what's the actual gap of that life we're going to be living. So now you have the gap to fill. So there's a few tools that you can use to figure out how you're going to fill that gap. So those would be, can you earn more? Can you save money beforehand to fill it? Can you spend less than planned? And can you maybe change the length of the leave if necessary? So by looking at all those pieces, you can be really making an informed decision to say, I'm not willing to go on a less leave. So I'm willing to look at, can I make more? Can I spend less? What will that look like for me? So again, we're going to make the savings bucket. So we talked about that. So if you map out, and here's the thing, maybe people have 5 years that they know, maybe they're on the young end, they know they want kids, they can start saving now, incredible. Probably that's not the case. Maybe you just got pregnant and you're like, oh crap, in 9 months,
no,
I'm off
I gotta
with
say,
this baby.
that's probably what it's more or less like, but yeah.
Exactly. So we'll talk about that. So find your gap of what you would need for how many months you want to be off, divide it by the number of months you have to save. That number might still look really big, but that's okay because we have these different tools to look at: length of leave, spending during the mat leave. And so you're just going to map that out and save into your bucket each month. Now, the thing is, one might say, like you did, how am I going to save that money? We don't have extra money right now just to be saving into a bucket. So you really have to look at the full picture and consider what you can reduce now. Maybe you can make more money ahead of baby. So much more now, too. There's so much opportunity for side gig work that people, just from their home can make extra money. Actually, really quick little side story. Part of what got me into the personal finance stuff is following this woman called Canna Campbell. She is sugarmama.tv, and she does this $1,000 project. And so I did this $1,000 project where you would just do random little things to earn little buckets of $1,000, and she would put it into an investment. For me, it was to pay off my debt. So I was doing wild things. It's like when you start looking for opportunity, you see opportunity. So I did things like, with 3 kids now, it's probably less likely, but at the time I acted at a kid's birthday party as a Harry Potter character. I was making like birthday slideshows for people. I did some taxes. I even did, what do you call it? Captioning for videos. Like whatever I could do to make a little extra money just to keep filling that bucket, I would do. And so that's something to consider as well. Sometimes one of the limiting beliefs that people have around money is I work at my job, they pay me this paycheck. If I don't get a raise, like this is all I can make. Yeah. And you really can look outside, like what else can you do? And so you can get really creative with that.
Okay. I found myself in a situation, particularly after my second child, working at this job, did not make any more money since I was single. And now I had 2 kids. And now I got to bring 2 kids to daycare. So the daycare conversation is very different now than it was then, because well, in a lot of facets, in a lot of ways, price was one of them. But I was literally working. I was probably, I think I was I calculated it to be something like $100 that I was bringing home after. Yeah. So I'm working full time to have 2 kids in daycare full time. Who is this valuing? What is going on there? So that was like a hard look at that situation.
And Ashley, those are the decisions that people can actually make when they're looking at their money. Sometimes we're just on autopilot, like just getting the bills paid. Yeah. So it's so important to really like be intentional and look, because maybe if someone's in that position, maybe they'd rather be home and they can make $100 extra. Maybe they can make more than $100 extra by staying home with their kids.
Or sometimes people might not be necessarily making more than they were, but you're saving more by being by finding something else. And then maybe your work-life balance is a little bit better. So like there's lots of ways, but that's actually a question I had for you. There are some limitations to making more money when you're on EI. So that's something to consider as well. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah. So what you can do is try to front load it and do it while you're leading up.
Yes.
That can be tricky as well because we're tired. We don't feel great, whatever. But something to consider is with EI, they will hold back 50% up till 90% of what you bring in a certain week. So if you make a little money, you can so when you get EI in Canada, you don't have to report like you would with a regular EI claim when you're on a maternity or a parental leave. But if you want to make money during that time, and if you run the numbers, and all the information's on the CRA website, so you can look at what makes sense for you, you could make some money and they'll just reduce your benefit by 50% of what you made that week. So you still actually make a little bit more money.
You're still making some. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's good. Okay. So we're talking about these savings buckets. We're talking about the, trying to think about in advance and being like, okay, I know I'm going to be on leave. I think at this point you brought up too, and I didn't really think about it. We're thinking about all the expenses that we're going to have, or that things could be different, but we're not thinking about how our lives have changed. So we're not necessarily going to be, again, like maybe we don't have to drive a half an hour to and from work every day now. Maybe we're not buying coffee at Tim's every single time. So we're not also taking into consideration the things that we're going to probably peel back on while we're on leave as well. So that's good to bring up too. Yes. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
affording baby or babies. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there's multiple, and sometimes we're maybe going to continue to have them. So how do we plan a budget with baby on board?
Exactly. Yeah. So when we're talking about building that budget, your new life budget, that might take some research, especially if you're going to be a brand new parent. What does a baby cost? And so there are lots of resources. I have something that I give to clients that's sort of a big list of, everything that one could possibly think of, and they're not all going to be applicable, but you look through and say, what do I need to buy? What can I borrow? What could I receive as a gift? And then you can sort of build, what do I actually need to get myself and what's going to cost me money? And again, we're going to build the bucket ahead of time. We're going to be putting money in those buckets so that we have some funds to pull from. And that can help you figure out, are you buying a luxury crib or are you going to IKEA? This is again, value-based budgeting. You can buy the luxury crib if that's what's really important to you. I'll just tell you a quick story about my experience. When I had my first, I wasn't that young, but for some reason, it seemed like I wasn't married, and maybe that was the issue within my family. It wasn't an issue for me. Anyway, so I felt the need to sort of prove myself. I mean, I didn't know that at the time, but looking back, I'm thinking this is why that happened. I felt like I needed to have all the things for baby. And marketing of baby items makes you sort of feel like, to be a good mother, I must have the things for the baby.
100%. Oh, yes.
So I got all the things, and I got the good things. And it certainly built up some of that debt that we were holding on to because I was sort of proving myself. So that's fine. That happened. We had the stuff for baby 2. It's all good. But we were out west. We got rid of all our stuff because we didn't know if we'd do number 3. We came back home to Nova Scotia. We did move forward number 3. I had nothing. I had a crib. That's all I had. I had not a single thing for a baby. And I just took a different approach to it after my work, really in financial coaching, being really intentional, making that list. What do I actually need to buy myself? So I got things secondhand. I borrowed friend stuff. Like most of my stuff is just borrowed from friends who have it sitting in their house. And I value-based budgeted that. I said, okay, I had a hard wooden chair for my first 2 kids, and I don't know why. I hate that. So I want something really comfortable for me, and that is where I focus. That's where I'm going to spend my money. And other things were borrowed, secondhand, and just trying to spend as little as possible because I really came to the realization that you just don't need that much for your baby necessarily. And something that I'll say as well is the idea of baby services, what you do for people, what, postpartum doulas do for people. I could, for myself, if I really knew about those things back before baby, I would put so much more value on that than having the expensive baby gadgets. And so if you're saying, can I afford this or that, maybe consider what's going to make life easier for you and make the whole experience more enjoyable.
2 great points there. And that's something I bring up in one of our prenatal classes is that I know we need to think about the car seat and we want to make sure that they have clothes and they got a diaper and like those true necessities. But outside of that, what's next in line is the services, the people, that they don't all cost you money out of pocket because sometimes they are covered by your insurance, but not all things. And that's really where, and I don't think a lot of new parents really get that until they're living it and have gone through it. And they're like, oh yeah, I could have maybe put the money stuff in a different way. But when it does come to the items for babies, so I love that you're first focusing on like, what can we maybe get borrowed? What are going to be gifts? What is maybe something that we might have from a previous child or family members or what kind of thing? And then putting value on those things that are of importance. So if it's the really fancy crib, then you can plan for that. But maybe not everything else has to be super fancy. Or you wanted the chair. For us, it was a stroller. I knew we were going to have at least 2 children, or that was the hope and the plan. And ideally we would have 3, and we did end up. So we invested in a really good stroller that saw us through all 3 of those kids. So it makes that bigger ticket item way less daunting to get because you're actually going to see the value in it through over a course of many, many years.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
sometimes it really is valuable to spend a little bit of money on things like that. But when I have to put a plug about car seats here. When it comes to, this is not what we're talking about, but we are talking about money. When it comes to, because there's so many different levels of finance, like who can afford this seat versus this seat. If it's on the market, it is safe. So it shouldn't be, certain things like car seats shouldn't be about the cost. Oh, I'm spending more money, so my baby's going to be even safer in the vehicle. It's more about, does it fit your budget? How heavy is it when you pick it up? Does it even fit in your vehicle? Like, those are the kinds of things we want to look at with something like a car seat.
Such a great point. Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, the value-based stuff, it's like, where do you place value? Spend a minute to think about it, and then you can figure out where that money is going to go, because
it's really individual too.
Totally.
Yeah.
But marketing to new parents or parents in general, it's bonkers. It's so easy to get, you just had a terrible night's sleep. Oh, and then you're scrolling and you see something that's going to make them say, oh my God, I'll buy it. I'll buy all the things. Yeah. It's still hard.
Anything, I'll just get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really nice to know that there's people like yourself that can help us navigate this, but also really, I mean, you're doing it right here for this episode of sharing some really great practical ways that people can think about their money. Well, because again, money is something that we do not talk about. I've had plenty of guests on the podcast so far. All have been amazing. All are amazing. But I find it's the conversations that we get to have here. When I talk with Serena Haynes, Halifax's sex coach, one and only, and we talk about things like intimacy and sex during pregnancy and stuff, we're like, yes, these are the questions. I know they're in people's heads. They've been in mine, or they are in mine. I know they're in others. But who do you talk to about it, and who really knows? And you even said yourself, as a financial person yourself, thinking about it personally was a totally different story at first than how you could help somebody navigate that. So the guilt that you felt, imagine somebody who doesn't have that financial background, and the guilt that they're feeling about, why can't I manage money? Or, oh, so-and-so just got a raise, but we don't see it. Where did it go? It's like it just came and went. It's like it never even happened. So much of that is happening. So it's really important to really know where our money's going, but having those plans for what's important to you. To save on.
It's really, personal finance is personal. And so it's so easy, okay, spend less than you earn. Very simple math. But it's not easy because we have so much emotion tied up to all of the decisions we make with money. And, we can talk about the baby stuff. There's historical stuff. How were we raised to understand money, and how did we think about, when you do money mindset exercises, and if you hold a belief that people with a lot of money are maybe bad people or selfish people, that's going to hold you back from being a person that has a lot of money, because you see that as a negative. And so there's so many different mindset pieces to consider.
Oh gosh, that's going to have to be another episode, because I'd love to talk about that too. Really, of like, how did you grow up around money? What were your parents like with money? And you're either going to go in that same direction or the complete opposite. That's not how I want to see it go down. So, and who knows what that, anyway. This is what I
and what you said earlier about people don't talk about it. One of my clients has told me a bunch of times, she said, I think this is the last taboo. It's certainly one of the last taboos in our society, is talking about your money. And what I find I work with people is they start with sort of a mindset of like, we don't talk about money. But then once they start the coaching work, they're so excited and so proud of how in control of their money they are, that they just want to tell everyone, like, it can be. And that's what happened to me. And then I did a financial coaching training course so that, you'd have the tools to properly coach people on this stuff. But yeah, it's what I wanted to do because it's so valuable and people really need it right now, I think. The one last thing we thought we might talk about is, we have the leave, but then there's families who would like to consider maybe one parent stays home long-term with their kids. And so it's still very similar. You have to look at what that gap is, but the difference is going to be that what you can do without for a year or 18 months of a maternity leave, it is different when you're looking long term, because you don't want to feel like you're on such a restrictive budget that it feels like, you know, crash diet, but now you're sort of in it. So it's the same thing. You want to build out that budget based on all the whammies that could hit you through the year, make it a monthly number, and just see what fits within that budget and move forward with it. It's again, value-based budgeting. If your family values someone staying at home, you just look at the numbers and what works. You know, I have a friend who, they were a 2-car family, and they went down to 1 car so that they can do what they want to do. And it's all about sort of weighing the different things in your life and what are you willing to sort of forego, or are there different ways to make more money? It's all looking at it. Once you see your money clearly, you can really make informed decisions about what you're going to be doing.
Well, I sure hope that this conversation has got everybody looking at their financial situation, whether you want to or not, because by the time this episode comes out, it will be after the holidays. And so this can be kind of a hard time to look at the budget and the money, but a really important time to look at the budget and the money, because even if you maybe went a little overboard over the holidays, it's like the sooner you can look at this stuff, I hope you agree. I'm sure you agree. It can be scary, but then if you need extra help with that, you can get it. It's like, okay, now is the first day of the rest of your life. I know that's really corny to say, but like it's never too late.
True.
It's never too late to turn things around and if you need support, that's where I want to take it next, Danielle. Where can people find you? I love that you're of that practical nature, that it's not, again, I think financial planner, I think like big, oh, I have to go into the bank and have that 2-hour meeting that they always want to have. I don't have time for that. So you're really practical with this. So I'd love for you to share where people can find you and find out more about your services.
Thank you so much. So my business is called Damsel Financial Coaching. My handle's everywhere, and my website is damseloutofdebt.com. And yeah, you can find me in all those places, mostly Instagram. And I offer free 15-minute Q&A calls. So if people are like, I don't know if that's really what would help, let's hop on a call and we can just have a chat about it, what your situation is. What I do is, if it's not a good fit, if it's really like another service that people are needing, I just refer them to that. So it doesn't hurt to have a chat and see what we can do. And you're right.
Amazing.
I'll just say really quickly about the time of year. I have a client that I met with this morning. Actually, they have 4 kids, and we've been working together for a few months. And he said to me today that Christmas is not impacting us this year, and meaning not the way that it has most other years. And so if you were to get going with coaching in January, you've got 12 months to plan for next Christmas. So it is a wonderful time to look at your money.
Yes. Yeah. So planning ahead instead of like getting hit by that bus and figuring out how you're going to work through it later.
Exactly.
We have a fun situation. Well, I mean, it's always fun when you have birthdays that happen around Christmas or right after. For us, we've got 2 kids that have early February birthdays, which feels like it turns around so fast. So again, January might be a scary time to look at your money, but the sooner you get to just know where everything's going, I find that can be so empowering. Like you've said with your clients, once you start actually seeing it and knowing some stuff about it, you will actually build confidence. It's kind of putting it under the rug and not understanding it or not really knowing is what can be the really scary part down the long run. So I hope everyone's going to go check that stuff out and go check you out. I love the handle, Damsel Out of Debt. That's perfect. So we're going to link to all that in our show notes to make it easy for people to find you. We're probably going to have you back, Danielle, because I have more questions that I want to get into.
Thank you. I would love to come back.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. If you're looking for more information or support along your parenting journey, check out birthbabysleep.ca. That's where you're going to find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. You can now join our Bringing Up Baby community membership as well, which has tons of additional benefits to helping you through all kinds of sleep challenges and transitions, navigating the transition to solid foods, and even your transition through early parenthood.
If you have any questions, just send them my way. Lastly, but certainly not least, if you got something out of this episode or our show in general, leaving a rating or a quick review goes a really long way to helping others find us. So please consider leaving one. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.